Hey guys, welcome back to Turn Back the Clock, episode number 31. My name is Dylan and my co host Adam. Adam, how's it going?
Great, man. Good to be with you again. Episode 31. Unbelievable. We made it this far.
Crazy.
Cool.
Oh, it's so fun. So, tonight we're really excited. Something that's been what we've been collecting a lot this last year, 2 years. We've been really diving into. Adam's going to cover the 90s and anything else he kind of want to talk about. I'm going to cover the 2000s because I'm really into the 2000s and until now. And what we've learned through collecting these cards and really let people understand and do their own research, but understand the print runs and how these things, how the parallels work. And a lot of guys, especially in the vintage world that we're in, they just go, it's impossible, it's too complicated, they print millions of them. It's so not complicated, and they don't print millions of the cards that you actually want to collect that in the future should hold value, just like in the 90s. Every era will have cards that are going to be worth money in the future and going to be collectible in the future, just like in the 90s when everyone thought the print runs were out of control and things were getting crazy. There are huge cards from those packs that were pulled, and we're going to discuss that, and we're going to bring up, dive deep into this and use Cardpedia and database to show you guys how we're collecting and our thought process behind it, and show you guys that just because they're printing a lot of base cards and random refractors, when it comes to the numbered cards and the certain parallels, they're not doing that many. So let's just take it from there. First, we want to talk about our story and maybe what got us into kind of going down the modern. I'm just calling modern all the way from 90 all the way till now, regardless if it's ultra modern or whatever. We're just sticking with that. So, Adam, what got you going into diving in the last couple of years? And I know you've always collected things like this, but you really dove in with Pedro Martinez. So give a little backstory and why you got into it.
So, I would say it's Pedro and also Larry Bird. So with Larry Bird, all his playing days cards come through the Junk Wax era, and he's got some great cards, but they're all pretty much mass produced. So I had a lot of fun putting together that run and completed the Larry Bird run, all his playing days cards, mainstream stuff, also some oddball stuff. But then you kind of like look, all right, well, where do I go from here? I want to keep collecting Larry Bird. I really enjoy it. So I started looking into like the 90s, and he really didn't have a lot of cards in the 90s at all. He wasn't involved in that era. He had retired in 92. So there really aren't a lot of like tough cards to get of Bird post playing days. But then when you start getting into like the 2000s, he's got a lot of really cool cards from like the Fleer retro sets. He didn't have any like PMGs because he didn't have cards in those original sets, but he does have those in the Fleer retro set. So I thought, hey, this would be cool to, go after some of these post playing days cards of Bird in the modern era that are tough to find. I mean, I just recently showed a 1 of 1 that I have from 2012. So it's a fun chase. So that kind of got me into it. And also, even before I started collecting Pedro during the 90s, I had really watched and was fascinated by a lot of the content about, a lot of it was like basketball and football, but they have the same cards in baseball. And, just some of those really tough to find parallels and chase cards from that era. I really wanted to take part in that. I found it really, really interesting and it would be fun. So I figured, well, I'll use Pedro as my medium to do that. And then that kind of let me go into that era. And it's probably been a couple years now, and I've learned a lot. There's a ton more to learn. There always will be. But yeah, that's really what kind of got me down that path. That with Pedro, it was more about like type collecting. I was a fan of Pedro, but I really, more than anything, wanted to take part in these cards. And I just needed a good player that I connected with to use through that. And he's been the guy. And then, with Bird, it was just wanted to keep going. I didn't want to stop. So that's kind of what led me into it.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'll let you. I'll do a quick rundown of why I started collecting modern stuff. I used to buy loads and boxes of stuff. There's a huge period from 2000 to like 2010 where I was buying tons of boxes and having a blast. Still collecting vintage, but all doing that online, buying graded vintage. But the stuff I was buying in packs, it was just for the thrill of it. And I was selling all of it back on eBay. I didn't collect any of it. It was just me and my friend. And so once the pandemic hit, things just took off through the moon. It was like, oh my gosh, this is not going to end well. All I kept thinking is these guys are going to get destroyed because all the stuff was going through the roof. Well, once it all came crashing down, I've always wanted to collect Mike Trout cards. And so once those things, about a year and a half ago, Mike Trout's cards just kept going down. And now I go, well, this is the time. And what really triggered it was I bought a Mickey Mantle card on eBay, a vintage Mickey Mantle card. But what showed up was a Mike Trout. This exact card showed up in the mail. The guy shipped me the wrong card. And I had it on my desk and I told him, look, it was like a $30 card. And I go, hey, would you be willing, because the other Mantle was like a $45. And I go, would you be willing to take off $10? I'll just keep the card. And then he said, yeah. And it sat on my desk and I just fell in love with it. So at that moment, I go, you know what? If I'm ever going to start collecting this stuff, I'm ever going to start collecting Mike Trout, now's the time for me to get in, because the cards are the same price they were before the pandemic, before the big boom. They all crashed way back down. So I started buying them. And as the story goes, you have to learn what to buy. But I initially went for gold, numbered out of the year, because to me, I've known that since 2001 they've been doing that. And I've always loved gold, even when they were doing the gold winners in like 91 and 92. So I plugged in right there really fast. Well, obviously, I'm just going to do the golds. I thought to myself before I did any research or diving into anything, I didn't know anything to do with the regular Topps cards, because they're overproduced like crazy, just like they were when we were kids, just like they've always been. There's never going to be another Mike Trout update base card that's worth $1,000 in a Gen Mint 10. It's never going to happen again. There's just no chance unless the hobby crashes and dives and no one's collecting and they're printing a quarter as many as the cards are than now. So you really have to find something that I love collecting cards that are going to hold value or grow in value. I'm not ashamed to say that. I've said it. I've been married. Collecting is a marriage between collecting and investing. I have no problem in that, because you're using real money and putting it after cards. So you really want to know what you're going to collect. And so I started going nuts and digging in and figuring things out. So what we're going to do is kind of give you guys a jump start of how we figured out the ropes. Besides watching other people's channels and texting people, you can do it on your own. And it isn't very difficult. So first thing we'll do is I want to give an example of the print run situation. And we'll just start off with 2023 Topps. So we're going to pull that up. And what we're using is
Baseball Cardpedia.
Baseball Cardpedia. It's absolutely amazing. You can get all the facts you want per set. So this is what I do. So if you scroll down at them,
okay.
And what I did is I added up. Everyone says they're printing way too many. Well, yes, of course, of the base cards. But what you don't understand is in 2023 Topps, if you only go after the numbered parallels, all the numbered parallels, and what do you see on here? You see gold numbered out of 2023. You see green foil, orange foil, red foil, vintage stock, Independence Day, black, Father's Day blue, Mother's Day, Memorial Day, platinum, and printing plates. If you add all of those up, every single card they printed, it comes out to 3,697 total. To me, that's half as many as the Tiffany's cards that we all love. and endure. Like, we collect those because we think there's value in those. Well, if you stick to 2000, if you stick to the numbered parallels in the regular tops, there's those, to me, are like the Tiffany's of the future, the Tiffany's of the past, however you want to word that. And it's not that confusing. So that's why I kind of stick with gold. They're numbered to 2023. They're not, I don't think they're going to be worth millions of dollars in the future or anything like that, but they will continue to hold their value, in my opinion, just like the Tiffany's did. And in this case, which is so cool, we don't, back in the day, we couldn't collect Tiffany's unless you owned a store or you got your hands on a whole set. Now we can buy them individually. Well, with Topps, you can buy individual cards numbered to whatever parallel you think is the best looking. Independence Day, black, all of those things. It's up to you to decide what you think is your favorite to look at, your favorite to collect, your favorite thing, that thing that you think is going to be worth the most in the future. And then what I really find fascinating is diving in individually on each parallel. So like the Independence Day, always numbered to 76 because of Independence Day. And every year they have those. So there's a tradition behind that. So you can just say, hey, I'm only going to collect one Independence Day of my favorite player, Aaron Judge or Mike Trout or whoever that may be, one a year. You could buy one card and add that to your collection. And I just think the whole pop, like, they're printing too many, they do too many parallels. I just think it's untrue. What they're doing is hiding how many print runs they're doing in the gold foils and the rainbow foils and the royal blues, all of the parallels that are not numbered. We don't know how many they printed, but they printed a load of them. I don't think there's any, my own personal opinion here, I don't think there's any value in those cards. They may be cool to collect, but I would never buy one thinking the future, a gold foil is going to be worth more than a gold number to 2023. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me because you don't know how many they printed, and they printed tons, so I get that. But the argument that they're printing too many parallels and there's too many and it's difficult is not true. It is not true. So that's the biggest point I have to take. So Adam, I'll send it over to you. Let's go for your next thought on how you're taking the 90s.
Well, yeah, and actually, I just want to say on this, I think a big fear or hesitancy or whatever it might be, you know, vintage guys that just don't want to get involved with modern. I think a lot of it too is, like you said, it's a lot to take in. But if you laser focus on just golds or whatever your favorite thing is, I think, you know, people don't want to throw their money away, right? I think that's the fear of like, hey, I'm going to pay $100 for this card and it's going to be worth zero, you know, down the road.
Yeah.
I think if you stick to a certain parallel, like gold's probably always going to have some value to it. I think that's the key, is you can just block out the rest. And I think baseball for sure is not as, I don't know the word, but let's put it this way: basketball and football there's way more parallels in those cards. These are not Topps.
Panini.
Yeah, Panini stuff.
Yeah, they go nuts.
You could see 70 different parallels of a card. But so they've taken it to an extreme level, but you could use the same logic too. I've heard people that collect basketball cards that say, I don't care if there's 70 parallels. I only collect the golds out of 10 of my player. And guess what? They could make 1 million parallels. That's not going to take away from the gold out of 10, right? There's only going to be 10 of those, regardless of if they make 1,000 different parallels of the card that are camouflage and you know, whatever, all these different ones. So I think I agree with that. At first I didn't, but then the more I thought of it, I was like, that's a great point, because it doesn't matter what else they make, right? They could, it's just the golds that may carry the value in the future. We say golds, but maybe it's something else. But I think you got to look for, I do agree with that. You got to, it's not so much in the 90s as much, but with modern stuff, I would definitely look for serial numbered stuff. If you want it to have some value to it in the future or be somewhat collectible in the future, definitely look for the serial numbered cards. I would definitely go with that, because there's a lot of these SSPs that they say that, oh, it's an SSP, you know, color blast, like in Panini stuff or Kabooms, and they have a lot of demand to them, but most of those are not numbered, and they're not numbered cards. So I think people are going to be shocked in the future when a lot of these boxes that aren't opened up yet do get opened up. They're going to realize, wait a minute, that really wasn't so super short printed. So I wish I went for the serial numbered cards instead, you know?
Yeah, I have the same thoughts. The serial number, to me, it states it right there. It's simplistic. And so simplistic is what collectors tend to go after, like Topps. It's always the most popular thing. And everyone wonders why, everyone doesn't go into pre-war. Well, pre-war is not simple. And Topps is simple. And if you stick to your lane, and let's go back to like the base cards. I know you feel strongly of the fact that base cards, we've talked about it. They're basically, I don't want to say they're worthless, but they're no different than a 1987 Topps Jose Canseco. Like, to me, buying a base card and a PSA 10 in this modern day, one day, I just think those will just completely crash. I don't see any value whatsoever. No. A PSA 10 in a base card, to me, is literally, if it's $100 today, I could see that being $10 in the future, just totally. Like the cards were $10. It makes zero sense to me. To me, it's crazy. I just don't understand, like, buying 10s in I get the 10 game, but I don't understand the base card. It's fun to collect, but they should be $5, $15 at most. If it's an Ohtani rookie, it's $15, $20, say. I don't see value in those, and I know you kind of feel the same way.
Totally. And that's one of the refreshing things about collecting in the 90s is I find myself not caring about the grades. And that's refreshing because, as I mentioned earlier, when I was collecting Larry Bird, doing that run through the 80s, really the only separating factor from a dollar card to a much more than a dollar card is the grade. So, unless you just want to get it over with in one day and get all the Larry Bird cards of his playing days on eBay, you could do it and not spend a lot of money, and that's fine. But if you do want it to be somewhat of a chase, of a challenge, and you want to spread it out a little bit, the grade is really the only thing that does that through that era. But then you go in the 90s, and I find myself not caring one bit. I don't want a card that's bent in half or like is chipped off half of it. Like, I want it to look good, but I do not care what the grade is at all. I really don't. So that's refreshing to me because for me, it's like, oh, I just want to get a copy of that card. It's numbered to 50. There's 50 of them in the world. I just want to find one, whether it's a 5 or a 9. I do not care. I'd rather actually find the 5 because then I'll save a lot of money. So it's just a fun era. And I more so than even the cards, I did want to mention, I do find it interesting. Everyone collects how they want to collect. And I just think that guys like our age, especially that are baseball fans, if you think about, for me, like the peak of watching baseball was in the 90s, like the 98 home run chase, and then all the way up to like 2004 with the Red Sox. And that's personal to me, but I really feel like the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry and the Cubs and baseball was just awesome to watch. I know PEDs and all that, but for me, I don't really care about any of that. I just thought it was like the most fun sport to watch from like 98 to 2004. Like that period of time for me is like, that's my golden era. And a lot of those guys, they were mired by steroids and stuff, but as time goes on, I feel more and more like just nostalgic about those guys. Pedro, but also like McGuire and Bonds and all those guys, Ken Griffey Jr. later in his career. Those guys, like, as more time goes by, I just love that era. I love that time of baseball. It makes me just kind of happy to think about that period of baseball, even now that I know a lot of the guys were jacked up on steroids and stuff. So it is kind of sometimes confusing me, like, why I don't understand why more guys our age are only collecting vintage and they don't mess around at all in the in the 90s or the 2000s. You could do both. Like I do both, and a lot of these cards aren't that expensive, but I think like everyone's probably got a favorite team. If you were a fan, you got a favorite team or a favorite player from that period of time. I just find it very fun to player collect or team collect. And there's so many different cards that's the fun thing is you can get creative. Like when you're collecting vintage, it's pretty much set. Like, all right, if I'm a Clemente collector, shout out Theo. If you're a Clemente collector, here's the checklist. Okay, these are the cards. PSA has it on their website. Here's the basic run. Here's the master run. These are the cards. This is how you collect Clemente. But if you collect during the 90s or whatever, modern or 2000s, you can get creative and collect a given player how you want to collect, right? Like there's so many choices that you can say, I want to make an essential credentials run of my guy. I want to make a Topps Chrome Gold Refractor run of my guy. I want to do whatever. And I'm only sticking to that lane, and it's going to be awesome. And so you can even get more deep diving than that too. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different options that are awesome. And honestly, I think there's a lot of lanes that are going to have a lot of value in the future, that even more than they have now. That's just my thoughts.
Well said. I think the lane thing it makes so much sense. A guy like Theo, to me, it's like, how are you not going after some modern cards in Clemente as well? I see a big shift. What I think is just a thought off my head that I think is gonna happen and slowly happen. Guys like me, vintage guys, now that they're printing more and more of Mickey Mantles and Clementes in today's cards, more than they ever have, I think a lot of those guys are going to start collecting modern Clementes and modern Jackie Robinsons, and you can collect them in your favorite parallels. And I think the future is going to be a lot of vintage guys, opening their eyes and realize these are baseball cards too. And they're really cool looking baseball cards. So why am I not trying to collect some modern Clementes that have new images, spectacular designs from the new 2000s, and you can continue to collect Topps cards? So I think the future of collecting the vintage players, so to speak, on modern cards is just now beginning. And I think
even if you don't want to do the post-playing days thing, because I understand that's not everyone's cup of tea, the post-playing days cards. If you're a Pirates fan and you were a Pirates fan during the 90s and the 2000s, maybe that's not the best team as an example to use. They haven't had too many great players. Andrew McCutchen, Jason Kendall, Brian Giles. But guess what? You could make a run of awesome cards that, regardless of the player, there's cards like, for example, I was looking for select certified 96 mirror golds. Insert player name, doesn't matter. It's a valuable card. It could be a common player, it could be the worst player in the league. That card's valuable. Obviously, they're more valuable if it's Ken Griffey Jr., but I saw a Jason Kendall 96 select certified mirror gold, and it was like the price of like a 1965 base card of Clemente or whatever in a mid-grade or something like that. And I'm just thinking, like, yeah, Kendall's not a Hall of Famer. He's never going to be or anything like that. He wasn't a great player. He was an all-star. And he might not be the best example, but that card, I'm looking at that like, I'm not going to buy it. But if I was a Pirates fan during that time period, I would scoop that baby up. It's an awesome card, regardless of price, like price movements. But that's also a card that I feel like if you bought that card for what I saw it on eBay for, I think it was a couple $100. That card is going to be worth more than that in the future. I pretty much guarantee that, unless the world doesn't exist or the economy crashes. But in a normal world, that card's going up in value if that's what you're looking for. Even if not, like, it's awesome. You can collect players that you love in awesome cards that are still playing days. And actually, I think that was a rookie too. It was a rookie for him. I mean, it was just like, I just remember looking at that going like, why is that baby sitting there? Someone should be buying that.
Yeah, I love that.
If I was a flipper, I would have scooped that bad boy up and sold it for double the price to the right collector. But I don't want to do that. Yeah.
All right. So why don't go wherever you want to go with your next you want to pull up card PETA for any of your sets that you're talking about? Show everybody at home, like, the scarcity and the odds of the pack pulling odds, things like that.
Yeah, well, let's do this one. I was just looking at this one because I completed this rainbow here recently. Got a video coming out probably tomorrow on this, but this is 1999 Pacific Prism. Can you see it on the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So 99 Pacific Prism. And this one, I looked at this and I was like, when I got the red's the toughest one to get. I was thinking, well, now that I got the red, this would be a cool like rainbow to complete, because there's only, there's the base one, then there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's a 6-card run. And it shows you here, the base, obviously not numbered. The reds 123, even though there's way less of those because most of them got destroyed. And then the golds are 480, the purple 320, the mirrors are 160, and then the blues are numbered to 80. And I was able to complete that whole run. And I used to research that. I was like, oh, that's good. Because like when it gets too much, like if there's more than like 5 or 6, I start going, forget it. But for something like this is like a perfect. It was like Pacific Prism had it right, I think, in 99. 2000, they got crazy and they had like 15 different parallels. So again, you can pick just like, I'm only going to collect the golds or whatever. But if you do want to try to make a complete run of a parallel, then, a site like this, and you can look at it, and they don't really have the best odds on here, but all these are pretty much numbered other than the base and the red. So, you can use that as a guide as far as how to complete that rainbow. So
that's awesome. Well, okay. So let's just do that. So what you got there's about 900 cards total printed that are numbered from that set. Why don't you pull up, you said 2000, there's probably, they make 1 million parallels. Why don't you pull up the 2000?
Okay.
Just for fun, just to show guys, this is how I do my research on sets. Like, how many did they really print, and which ones do I want to go for, like you're discussing? And so
so they really went big on 2000. They, you got the base, then you got the Rapture Silver, the drops, the Pebbly dots, the Rapture Gold. Holographic gold was really cool, right? 480 again, and then they add in the Rapture Gold, like, not necessary, but okay. Sheen, slider, texture, tinsel, wood grain, holographic mirror, purple. So they got the same ones as 99, but they just added in a bunch more too. So I get that when people say like, it's just too much. It's too much to try to. If you're trying to do rainbows, absolutely, but if you're just trying to kind of do a player run where you want to just get a certain type of card of that player through the years, a consistent run, then obviously you can just figure out what you want to do, and it doesn't matter. It could be 1,000 parallels, doesn't matter. But I do understand that the set collectors or the rainbow collectors, the current landscape is pretty tough for those people. So I totally get that end of it.
I mean, even with that said, you're talking about 3,000, roughly, give or take, on those print runs. Mm-hmm. Except I'm not sure what the 448 or 565, does that mean they had 2 sets of Sheen? I mean, that's a whole nother, they're a lot more confusing than regular tops.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. Pacific was a little wonky.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like maybe some backdoor cards. I don't know. All right. Well, okay. Well, let me just give one more example of print runs, and and show some pack odds as well. So why don't you pull up 2009 Topps Chrome? And the reason I'm pulling up 2009 Topps Chrome is because it's the first year that Topps Chrome numbered their gold parallels to 50. And I found the Mickey Mantle, which I have here, numbered to 50. And so let's pull up that. Okay, so when you look at this, the total number of base cards that are paralleled, numbered, total number is 279 when you add them all together. Only 279 total numbered cards from 2009. That is not very many. And then the golds are numbered to 50. Blues are 199. And I love it. You could take an individual player like Mookie Betts and go for all the Blues Dodgers when he got on the Dodgers and do only blue refractors. And you can do that for his whole run. And likewise with each player. There's so many ways you can take it, but I think the whole point of like us showing you guys this is it's not that complicated, and there is a scarcity involved in collecting modern cards. They don't just print millions and millions of these numbered cards. They may print millions of base cards, and I can't reiterate that enough. And it's freaking just so fun to collect. Like
what I love about it too is kind of zoning in on, like, we keep mentioning gold, refractor, gold, because gold is a constant throughout the years in a lot of these sets and runs. And for me, that's important. I think if you're going to look for collectability, a gold refractor, it's every year. Sometimes they change the numbering, but like you said, numbered to 50, right? If you can look at a player and go, all right, I can do this run of years, and every year he's got a gold refractor numbered to 50. I'm going to just focus in on that and make that run, and then stay away from the parallels that were like one-hit wonders, or they were kind of off and on. Go for the consistent ones that have that hobby history and that history throughout the set. I think that's important. I mean, and people who do, like, again, the gold prisms in Panini, numbered to 10. One of the reasons, not only because they're numbered to 10, but they're consistent. Every year there's a numbered to 10, and they might have a tiger stripe one year or a zebra clown parallel, but that's not going to be in the next year. So it doesn't matter, right? It's the golds, the constant. Go for the constant ones that have collectability and have consistency, where other people can make that same run.
I think so too. I think that's pretty important. And then when you look at the pack odds here, so if we look at the gold refractor on this, pack odds 1 in every 50. Well, we obviously know it's not 1 in every 50 you're going to get a Mickey Mantle gold, because there's only 50. You have to do what Brian, High Pop. What's Brian's channel's name?
High Pop Professor.
High Pop Professor. You don't need to be a professor to figure this out, but High Pop Professor, you have to times that number by how many cards there are in that parallel. So the gold refractor, there's a gold refractor of every single card in the set. So if there's 660 cards in the set, times that by 50, that's 1 in every 33,000 packs, you would finally get your Mickey Mantle. So you really got to do the math on these things, and it's not that complicated. I used to text our friend Shane, like, hey, what is the odds of this? And then you told me about Baseball Cardpedia, and I was like, no way, this is insane.
Yeah, but I remember when I first told you about it, you're like, I don't want to research anything. Yeah. I don't want to do it. And here we are, man. You're deep diving. I love it.
100%. It's so much fun. I can't stress it enough. All right, let me move that. All right, so Adam, any other I think I want to stress, number one, these are our opinions. Like, we could be so wrong about everything we talk about, meaning like golds, maybe golds aren't the greatest. Maybe the gold waves, the orange waves are going to be the future that the future generation collects. Maybe the sapphires, maybe this, maybe that. But these are our opinions, and I think it's important for us to tell you guys our thoughts, because this is how we're kind of taking our
well,
collection.
Let me ask you this. Do you ever get the vibe in the vintage YouTube community? Because let's be honest, in the circle of people that we connected with, right? Yeah. Large majority of vintage collectors, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And there's I don't know. Do you get the vibe that shiny cards are like, ooh, shiny? What are you doing with those shiny cards? We don't do shiny cards.
At least 75% of the community that we are in thinks shiny cards are a complete joke, and they're worthless, and they're never going to be worth anything in the future. Now, there's quite a few guys that love them, and I mean, they're baseball cards. That's what I don't get. Now, I didn't collect them before I got on YouTube, and would I have? No. But I'm so open I changed my direction on life, on choices, on everything so many times in my life. And that's the whole point of it. And I think vintage guys, our little circle, I don't understand, because most of them all watch baseball. Why wouldn't you want to be collecting some of the cards from today's players? And why not learn which ones should be the most valuable in the future? Because I promise you, you can write it down in stone. Cards from 2023, Topps Chrome, anything. There will be cards pulled from that are going to be just like the Nolan Ryan from 92 and the Reggie Jackson autograph. There's going to be cards, or from the 90s, the Topps finest 93 finest refractor, Nolan Ryan. There's going to be cards like that are in packs today. So if you can just find them now before other people get to them, because like you say, there's only 50 in the end of this card. There's only 30 of this card. No matter how many they printed of everything else, there's still only that many of that card. So it doesn't take that many to dry up the flock, It doesn't take that many Aaron Judge collectors to dry the flock of 2023 golds and 2022. When you see a card, you gotta go after it sometimes.
And to be fair, it goes both ways too, because like some of the the modern, ultra modern collectors that I've listened to on certain podcasts and YouTube that don't collect vintage, they'll trash on vintage too. They'll be like, who collects that beat up cardboard? I never watched those guys play. So it kind of goes both ways. Like the trash talk goes from both ends of it. I kind of, man, I don't know. I love both. You got to change your mindset. The mindset you use for vintage, you just got to kind of change it a little bit when you're doing the modern stuff. It's a different approach. It's a different way to look at the cards. But man, I love a nice refractor, just like I love a nice, 1955 Bowman. It's just a different appreciation, but I don't know how to rank them. I love them both. I think they're both awesome. And as people, I just find it hard that people, like, if you've been collecting a long, long time, how you don't learn to appreciate both. That's it. Everyone do what they want to do, obviously, but I just find it it's almost like inevitable. I feel like that at some point it's like you're going to stick in one little tiny lane for your whole collecting career. That's kind of tough, especially when there's not that many cards to go after in vintage, right? Like for me, I get it out of my system, that chase, because with vintage cards, most of the ones I want still, it's just money. Money's the preventing factor for me getting it. It's not that like, oh, it never comes up. The stuff in vintage that I go after. With you, I understand the eye appeal, and I'm sort of like that too. But a lot of it is just the money is the preventer. And then it's cool also to collect certain way too, where it's the actual card itself that is the preventer. Like it doesn't come up; it comes up every 5 years. So I just got to be ready and research and all that stuff. So I like having both irons in the fire, really.
Yeah. And I feel like the guys that in our world that collect the pre-war stuff, they hound like guys like me who just collected tops his whole life. There's a reason that I collect tops, because I just grew up looking at them at my card shops and it really just enjoying the look of them. And a lot of the pre-war stuff, like the rarity, some of them don't even look good. Like they just don't look, they're not appealing to me. Now, you can use the argument that I haven't, there's a lot to learn in pre-war, yes. But in the end, I want my card to look really good. So pre-war to me, like when I do go down, when I have pre-war cards, when I buy them, the number one importance to me is, does the card look awesome? Not how rare the card is. It's how awesome it looks. I guess they probably think the same thing, but the argument to them is that we don't go backwards. And I just think it can go, you can just collect everything. They're all baseball cards. Like John Mangini collects it all. Refractors, he might not have dove into pop reports on refractors or like, pack pulls, the things we're talking about tonight, but he enjoys a refractor as much as he enjoys, his old, T206 cards. Like he loves them all, and I love them all too. And I think that's kind of, we just want to show people that you can collect this stuff, and if you want them, like if you're someone like me who doesn't want to just buy cards to accumulate, you want to buy cards because you love them and you want them to be worth money and money in the future, there's a way to do it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because look, everyone has a budget. You can't get everything all at once, and so I understand, like, people that maybe have come back into the hobby and have been collecting for a few years, maybe they will make their way into modern, maybe they'll branch out or whatever, but like they still got their hands full with collecting a player from the 50s and 60s, right? They still haven't completed the run. So I understand that laser focus. I think for me, like once I'm still collecting Mickey Mantle and vintage cards and all that, but you kind of have this choice too, where like I do equate pre-war with a lot of the 90s stuff, right? So like I could make a move. I could have made a move back to pre-war and started collecting, going after, because it's the same thing. It's not serial numbers, but it's just existence, right? Like there might be 50 of a card of pre-war card. It's not numbered, but there's 50 of them that are out there. Whereas there's a serial numbered 50 cards from the 90s. So then I was like, what would I rather do? Would I rather, like, I'm not one of those people who go, I never watched that guy play, so why would anyone want his cards? Obviously, because I collect a lot of vintage. But I did start thinking about it. I was like, all right, I could go back to the pre-war era and I could start becoming a Walter Johnson collector, right? Or someone like that. All-time great, definitely one of the top pitchers ever. And a lot of his cards are expensive, but so are the 90s cards for Pedro, right? So it's probably a lot of the same ballpark. But then it was like, would I rather collect a guy that I went to the Fenway Park and watched pitch? He won a World Series for my team. Just awesome memories, right? Let's say the prices of the cards are the same and the populations are about the same of the cards that I would go for. I'm going to choose Pedro over Walter Johnson. You could say Walter Johnson was better than Pedro, or maybe, but they're both all-time great pitchers. I do side with, I watched that guy play. That's a deciding factor for me when I don't have unlimited money. So I kind of have to make that choice, right? Like if I'm going to make a player run of a pre-war guy, there is something to it that, like, look, I appreciate how old the cards are and how great the players were. But if I have the choice and the rarity's the same, manufactured versus real rarity, I get it. But I'm going to probably choose the guy that I watched play and that I was a fan of and saw in person. That is something. Like, there is something to that. I just want to say that.
Well, so I'm like the opposite. I could care less if I ever saw any player play. That's never even crossed my mind. I don't get more nostalgic to guys that I saw play, guys that I didn't. That means nothing to me. I'm like, just love the cardboard. I could never watch baseball again. I'm still collecting baseball cards. There was periods where I didn't watch baseball at all, probably like a 5-year period. I was still collecting baseball cards. I don't care. I read books all the time. I'm probably on my 3rd Mickey Mantle book in the last 2 months. I love reading books about these players. That probably draws me a lot to the vintage stuff. But in the end, I could never read a book. I could never watch baseball again. I'm still collecting baseball cards because of the nostalgia, because of what they make me feel like inside, how when I hold one, it gives me this warm, fuzzy feeling. And when I look at my walls and I see these cards that I saw when I was a kid on these walls that I never dreamed of owning, it does something inside of me. It gives me that endorphin kick, and you don't need to drink. You don't need to do anything to have that. And I can have that until I'm dead. And I could be 100 years old and still collect cardboard. So I guess I'm different than you. I don't need to watch these guys play. I would rather collect a Walter Johnson than a player of today if I had only 2 choices. But I don't have only 2 choices. I can collect all of them. So yeah,
I like that. I appreciate that we're a little different there, because I think that's a good thought exercise, right? Like, think about that. And you could do Derek Jeter or Ty Cobb, right? You could, yeah. and you can choose. You can, if you grew up and you're a Yankees fan and Derek Jeter won all these World Series, and you could spend your money collecting the really hard to find parallels for Jeter from the mid 90s to the early 2000s, or you could make a Ty Cobb run. That's maybe in the comments, let us know on that. What would you do? Like, or sub out Jeter for whoever your guy is on your team. If you were a Dodgers fan, I don't know, whoever that would be, but whatever your guy would be during when you were the biggest fan, who was your guy? And yeah, junk wax is different, right? But if we're talking about an era where they only have very low population cards and the values are about the same, what would you choose? What's your deciding factor? I like that. Yeah, it's like, well, for me, it's the card, right? It's the look of the card that's going to do it. But let's say you like the look of both, like for different reasons. What's your deciding factor? I know it's an interesting thing to think about, and I get both both answers basically. I totally understand it.
Yeah, another thing that is funny, I think a lot of people assume that a vintage collector listen to their parents tell them stories about baseball and we're integrated. No, my parents didn't want anything to do with sports. We never watched a single sports event on TV. I watched them by myself. My parents never watched anything. My dad didn't know who Jose Canseco was, Ted Williams, Clemente, no one. My parents did not like baseball. They did not like sports. Nothing was ever on my TV. I just loved collecting cards. So in the end, like you don't even have to like sports to like cards. And I think that there's a big divide, and a lot of people think like you have to love baseball, you have to love sports. Man, I collect soccer cards. I don't even watch soccer. I just love the cards themselves, and so that's what.
Dylan, you have to realize by now you're a unique individual in a great way.
I guess so.
And I mean that's the best compliment I can give you is that you're probably less than a 0.001% of the hobby. I mean, most people they like sports that collect sports cards. That's one of the reasons I don't do any of the cards that are out now is because I'm not really watching sports now. So for me, if I'm spending money on a card, for me, it's like I got to have a connection, especially on a modern card. If the guy's not retired or anything, if he's still playing, and I'm not a fan or I'm not watching, like I'm not involved. I'm not buying it right now. So that's why I really only buy retired players, and that's just kind of how I go about it. But again, I appreciate it. I love that you didn't have any of that influence, as far as like that a lot of us did. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of torn when you hear that argument of, our card, is the vintage thing going to get carried on? I always think it will, but I think the strength of it will weaken a little bit over time because I just feel like the passing on of it is not as strong as it used to be. I don't want to go down this will be a whole episode.
So opposite. They are printing more vintage Hall of Fame players in packs in baseball and basketball than they ever have in history. No one's gonna ever forget who Babe Ruth is, Mickey Mantle, Clemente.
I'm not saying that.
No one's gonna, and trust me, but these people, these kids these days see cards that are sold on auction. They see the Mickey Mantle. And that's never. And look, I never buy that because I guess I'm that guy who was never told about Mickey Mantle. I learned this stuff on my own. I never thought of it in that way. No one ever told me a story about anyone. But I think you're really smart on the fact that you're collecting guys that are retired. Pedro, what can he do to mess up? Nothing, really. He's only going to get more famous the more he does broadcasting and the more his stats come to life. Whereas a guy like me, I'm collecting Mike Trout, and I'll watch the Angels because Mike Trout's playing. I don't watch the Angels now. He got hurt. My whole season's done. I don't watch any baseball now. I'll look at Aaron Judge's stats and I'll look at Mookie's stats, and that's it. I don't look at anybody else. I don't watch any more games because my Angels are done. It's just like, I guess the Dodgers I'll still watch because of Shohei and Betts, but I'm not, there's a lot more risk in collecting the guys that are still playing, like Trout. I mean, Trout gets hurt. Yeah. It's just like, right? But it is what it is. Well, all right. So you got to go. We had fun. Take whatever you guys want from this. But I think most importantly, take the fact that baseball card collecting or collecting cards in general is just really fun. And there's so many different avenues you can go down. And there's no wrong way if you're having fun. But I think there is a wrong way in collecting for value and for future value. You really have to think about what you're putting your money into. If that's how you collect, like me, I want every card I buy to be what I want to be able to sell that card for what I paid or more in the future. Whereas somebody might just buy a card because they just want to collect it and put it in their album. That's totally cool too. So that's any final words from you, Adam?
No, I just love talking with you about this stuff, man. I love it. And I don't know, the next turn back the clock might not be till Hobby Palooza. I'm going to be traveling a little bit. So this could be the last one until June, whatever, end of June, Hobby Palooza. So that will be fun. We got to figure out what we want to do for that episode.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. I cannot wait. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. And until next time, be inspired. Don't be influenced by fools like us. Shaka.